Right. What were you
But
thinking?
it's one of those. I had a one of my youth pastors when I was a teenager. He told me he gave me a statement. He said, "You were never as dumb or as cool as you thought you were."
Ever.
And so I thought that was funny. But um, one of the issues that you run into is if you're going to talk about a dark subject, typically we want to be the hand that helps hold somebody up. We
Mm-hmm.
don't. But if you're going to be honest about it, we've all been in those situations.
Right.
Kind of like you had mentioned earlier, as we're kind of pre gaming the episode, where it was, how did you word it? Whether it be for a long period of time or even if it's just a fleeting moment, we've all been through
Right.
that
Right.
situation.
Right. You've whether
You've been
you've
overwhelmed.
right stressed out and tired and exhausted. And before I jump on that one, I kind of wanted to tie into when my thought process on checking out changed because mine actually
Okay, yeah,
happened.
we'll circle back.
Yeah, mine
My
actually
bad.
happened a lot younger. Um, because I same boat that you were in. Stigma made me think, oh, that's weakness. But it wasn't until I actually lost somebody that I valued and respected. It was in the military, and again, we won't say names or anything like that. My guys from my unit will know who I'm talking about. Um, but his reasoning is what bothered me, but it was him that changed my thought process. And most guys will tell you, especially as we get older, there's very few men that you look at and say that's a role model, that's an example,
Right.
that's somebody I look up to. And I'll be the first to tell you that my list of names is counted on one hand of men that I can look at and say that's somebody I can look up to. That's somebody I want to emulate or be like. And
If
being
I can interrupt, I'm assuming I'm on that list. If I am, okay, I'll say that. If I'm on the list, if as you count them out, can I get the middle finger? I
if
feel
you're on
like,
the list, I'll
yeah,
give you the
if I'm
middle
on the list, I
finger.
want the middle finger.
Okay. So this young man, we were we were about the same age. We were the same rank. He had me by 2 days. He'd gotten promoted 2 days before me. We had the same responsibility, the same title, and the same amount of guys that we were leading. And everybody that knew me from the military knows that number one, I was arrogant. I was very cocky. But if you were going into something, I'm the guy you wanted beside you
Hmm.
because I may not make the right decision, but I made a decision, and by God, we're coming out of it. This guy was the guy that I wanted beside me in any fight that we were in. He was a very methodical thinker. He was very low toned. He didn't raise his voice. He hated yelling at his guys, and his guys hated him, but they respected him, and they didn't even want to go work for me because he was that good of a leader for them. And I mean, just a perfect example of who you'd want to emulate as a leader. And when we found out that he had checked out, it wasn't because of PTSD. It wasn't because of battle scars or finances or anything like that. The girl he'd been dating for 2 weeks broke up with him, and that was the catalyst, the straw that broke his camel's back. And so when you think about it in that juvenile mentality, you go, ugh, that's it, 2 week girlfriend, and you're
Right,
done.
right.
But in the long scheme of things, I'm looking at a guy that led men in and out of battles with fearless, just no fear at all. Had just a great head on his shoulders in terms of life. But that's what it was. And it was the loneliness that got him. And I remember getting in some trouble because some high ranking people who were also young and immature were making some snide comments about his character and how weak he was, and how they mocked him and they mocked his family who would walk the area and everything else. And being the individual that I am, made my voice heard, and it got me in a little bit of trouble because it was more of a how dare you disrespect his legacy,
Right.
the emulation that he is. And we take a different approach as men, especially when we're surrounded by other men, that we have to have this
Machismo,
macho
right.
machismo, attitude, and
Right.
we're unfazed by the hardships. But the reality is, I can't tell you how many times we've come home from a crazy, you know, incident at work, and I've sat in that driveway and just been like, I don't know how I'm gonna walk in this house and pick my kids up and, you know, be okay with everything that's going on. And last night was no exception to what you were talking about earlier. Um, I had a really good friend of mine. She had sent me a message. We've been friends since I was 10 years old, and uh, said, "How you doing?" And I said, "I'm okay." To which she, obviously pushed the
She
issue.
just couldn't leave it alone.
Right, right. You know,
Typical.
typical. Uh, pushed the issue, and she goes, "No, what's wrong?" And being a typical guy, not wanting to bust out feelings or emotions or whatever, I tried to play it off, and I was like, "How much time you got?"
Right.
And her response to me was, "If I'm asking you, I'm making the time for you. So what's wrong?" And I just laid it out there. And I'm talking about I'm exhausted. I'm tired. I'm angry. I'm irritated. I've got so much going on. I've got, and as this is all going on, I've got my daughter is playing with our dog, and my son is telling me his stomach hurts, and, they're hungry. And I'm just like, I'm not strong enough to keep holding up this world. And if the world crumbles around me, that's their world that crumbles. And I have two choices. I either let them see me weak or I let them see me fail. And I'm telling you, when I laid all that out, and this is just in a text message, this isn't even on the phone. I lay all this out, and I'm now in tears. Like they're just streaming down my face. I can't control them. I can't undo it. And my little girl, as tiny 6 year old as she is, uh, Daddy, are you okay? And I'm okay. Do you need a hug? No, no, I'm okay. And now I'm sitting here, the monster destroyer, the guy who goes under the bed and makes sure everything's safe, and my 6 year old little girl is holding me as I'm falling apart in my bed, and the tears are just streaming. And Daddy, are you okay? And I'm good. I'm okay. Daddy, why are you crying? It just happens. I got stuff in my eyes because I don't want to look weak.
Right.
I don't want her to
Right.
see me falling like that. And it just of course, this is when you text me, and then um, everything starts to turn around. But it's that darkness where last night I have that fleeting thought, like I could just check out right now.
Right.
All these problems are gone. I don't have to worry about anything after that.
I think that it's normal to have those thoughts because those thoughts don't mean action.
Right.
In the same way that, hey, we think things all the time, but we never act out on it.
Right.
It's,
What do
it's
they call them? Intrusive thoughts.
so yeah, you don't want to let your intrusive thoughts win.
Right.
So it's one of those things where, yeah, you can have those thoughts and understand that those are normal, but it's how you respond to those.
Yeah.
It's did you reach out? Did you have the conversation? And things like did you seek out help in one form or another? And like we said, there are a lot of people who, you know, if they've got to pay for a psychiatrist, they're not going to do it. And we
Right.
can't make them do it. And there's free avenues available, but we can't make. You can have all the tools in the world, but you actually have to use one of them.
Right.
And
Well, and the problem with free is you get what you pay for.
right, right,
And I'm all about the whole concept of free medical care and all of that stuff. But in hindsight, if you're not paying for a higher value, you're not getting
right,
it. You've got people who see everybody day in, day out. And so, like for me, I've never chosen that route because, one, you've got to build a trusting relationship with that person to open up
hmm
and divulge that kind of stuff for.
right,
And two, the time it takes, and guys, we want immediate answers. Oh, that's broken, I'll fix it right now. We don't want I'll just piecemeal this
yeah. It's
together
going to take 6 months
until.
to a year or whatever. And
Right.
don't get me wrong, it's I've got experience going to therapists. Some of them have been good, some of them have been bad. But none of them have been immediate.
Right.
And so it's one of the things where a lot of guys are like, man, why would I go spend all this time on, go see a therapist or a counselor or a
Right.
pastor. Why would I go do that when I could spend a couple hours playing Call of Duty?
Right.
And get
Get my stress relief
yeah,
without having to pay
I'll
for
be
it.
mean to my friends who expect me to be
Right.
mean to them.
And honestly, I think that's the reason that we do what we do. I think that's why we joke the way that we do, and the way that we
Yeah.
take it, the routes that we do, because is it serotonin? Is that the chemical they say?
I'm not a
So there's,
doctor.
when you laugh or you're happy, you have a release of a chemical inside your body that
Sara Lee. The dessert like bread.
so stupid. So
Yeah, Sara Lee, like one of them frozen pies. You can't be mad eating one of them.
I mean, I'm not disagreeing with your logic because I agree with you. But there's a chemical that's released when we're laughing and joking and we're having a good time.
Right.
And I think that's why we take that approach because it's easier for us.
Well, I think it's easier and it gives some type of comfort, but I
Right.
think it's the same as a Band-Aid on a bullet hole.
Yep.
And so it's one of those things where, you have to accept the fact that, hey, all guys go through this. Like we've talked about, there's a reason why guys have this natural inclination to monsters
Yeah.
and werewolves and vampires and I'm not talking about the Twilight vampires. I'm talking about legit
I almost spit my Red Bull.
legit monstrous fiends, for lack of a better term. Like
Right.
we're obsessed with them. That's why the movie franchises that come up are just, they make millions upon millions of dollars,
Right.
because we are so connected to that and it's there's a, I'm gonna say it lightly. There's a bunch of cringe-worthy stuff out on the internet, like oh, if you throw me to the wolves, I'll come back leading the pack. No, you won't.
Right.
No, you won't. You're
Right.
not that. You're not
Right.
that big of a
You
of a
ain't
baddie,
DiCaprio. You ain't gonna live inside of a
Right.
bear.
And so you got a lot of those type mentalities. I'm a wolf. I'm a this
Right.
or that or whatever. Or the devil whispered to me. There's something about a storm, and I am the storm.
Her
No, you're
demons
not.
match my
No, you're
demons.
not. So it's one of the things where we are super connected to dark things. Like
Right,
we,
right.
we have no
The
problem with
masculine
that.
side of the dark.
Right.
Yeah.
But, the issue is just because you're comfortable in the darkness, because there's a lot of guys, man, they have walked through hell. That's just, there's a lot of guys, whether, from the time they were children, have just absolutely had a crap hand dealt their
Oh,
way.
yeah, yeah.
Their path is hard, whether it be, parents not being in the home or abusive parents, we deal with that all the time, and it just, they move on to that. It could be, like our generation. Nothing against the World War II generation. They're hands down the greatest generation.
Agreed.
But we've got guys that we know that have legit spent their entire career from the time they got out of high school to the time they retired 20, 30 years later, being in war.
Yeah.
From the time the war on terror started, you could legit log a 20-year military career and always be on a battlefield.
Yep.
And you don't get to just walk away from that. As much as it's not romantic like the movies,
Not at all.
or anything like that. Like it's not. It's you don't just go from that to normal life. And unfortunately, we see that all the time where
Right.
where guys suffer from PTSD. Man, they just break. And I know that everybody is going to be in firm support of the VA hospital because they do a phenomenal job of taking care of everybody.
That's the
you know,
biggest lie I've ever heard come out of your mouth.
But it's
If you're from the VA watching, I can't say the things that I'd like
yeah,
to say to you.
yeah, we're gonna keep it to ourselves. But it's one of those things where you got these guys who are just PTSD has become their best friend.
Yeah.
Or
They get
sometimes their
swallowed.
only friend. I'll
They
put
they
it
get
that way.
swallowed into the darkness.
And that's where they live there as long as they can until finally they just give up. And that's where
Yeah.
you get to so many veterans commit suicide every day, or
you
and
son of a...
we're doing push-ups. So it's so you got twice now. But that's where you get all these guys who are deciding to check out every single day,
Right.
and it's because they've stayed in the darkness so long that they think that that's home, and that's not home. Just because you're
Right,
comfortable there
right.
doesn't make it your house.
Well, the thing about the darkness is, and I've been there. I've been in the spot where there's no light.
Right.
And we're not talking about sitting in a room, turning all the lights off, and it's dark. We're talking about in your own head, there's nothing. It's just this empty spot in your brain where everything is dark. The worst of the worst things happen. And like you mentioned in the other episode, the boogeyman is the nicest monster you're gonna meet.
Right. Right.
It's the monsters that come at 2 in the morning. It's the bill collector monster. It's the my marriage or my relationship is failing monster. It's all
I'm not
these.
worth it.
Right. And so you struggle with this battle that, like, I know I've done it myself. You went through some of the craziest things that life could throw at you. Things that when you tell people the story, they go, there's no way you did that. There's no way you went through that. You're lying. You're making that story up. And then 6 months later, somebody else goes, do you remember that time? And the dude that you told the story to 6 months earlier is like, that really happened? And you're like, yeah, no, I have no reason to make that up. And so you get in this brain set that the action hero that you were, or the Billy Badass that
is
you
all
were,
you'll ever be.
is all you'll ever be. But then, I hit 39, pneumonia dang near kills me, and I'm sitting in a hospital bed going, what happened to the 20-year-old kid that would run through gunfire and carry, his buddies off the battlefield and do all of this? And so, again, back to these intrusive thoughts. And we talked about it a little earlier. Everybody has them. Every man out there. I don't care what your job is. Whether you're a military person, you're a first responder, you're an accountant, you're a Walmart greeter. Every man has this thought at some point in his life. I wish something would happen to me that would put me in a situation to be the hero of this circumstance.
Right. You want to be a hero.
Right. Even as little kids, we all played cops and robbers or cowboys and Indians, and you pretended you got shot in the arm, and you're still killing all the bad guys because you're like, I'm the hero. You want that situation, even if it's just a daydream or a split-second thought. You want that situation so that everybody goes, that dude's a badass, that dude's a hero, and you don't realize, and I can tell you, that moment does not last. It doesn't stick around. People that knew about my incident were like, oh, that dude took a bullet and he kept fighting. Granted, I say outside in because you were there and you just talk shit about it all the time. But people on the outside were like, oh, damn, that's crazy. But it doesn't last. We're 4 years later.
Right.
That moment's gone. The moment wasn't worth it. But just as we all have those thoughts of, I want to be the hero and I want to be Billy Badass and I want everybody to respect me and look up to me as this glorious hero, we all have those thoughts, just like we all have those thoughts that it would be so much easier to check out right now.
Right.
And
right.
that's...
I don't have to worry about all these problems.
Right. I'm done now.
If I'm gone.
Right. And go ahead. I'm sorry.
No.
That's the connection we're trying to make is... we all have the same thoughts. We're not as different as everybody thinks.
Right.
You sit there alone in your dark room and you're sitting there going, I'm alone. There's nobody here. There's nobody that would understand what I'm going through. There's nobody who can help me through this struggle.
Sometimes it's, hey, nobody cares.
Right. Or nobody gives a shit that I'm sitting in this room by myself and I'm thinking these fleeting thoughts of, I could just check out right now. My war's over. How could I end my war? What's the fastest way? And you get into that dark mindset of those thoughts of like, I could just be done. This pain goes away, and that's the other thing. We all sometimes hold on to pain because it's the only thing connecting us to the memory of what caused the pain.
Right.
Whether it's a loss of a loved one or whatever's causing you to hurt, you're clinging to that pain because that's the only way you can stay connected to what you lost. And you're not by yourself in those thoughts. You're not the only one that has them. And we're not going to go down that road of, you're not alone, reach out, get help. Everybody hears it and everybody goes, that's a load of bullshit. That's crack shit. I don't need to hear that. That's not what we're telling anybody. That's not the message we want to get to people who find themselves alone in that dark room having those thoughts. It's, you're not the only one. So it's okay to have the thoughts. It's when you start making the plans and following through that there's a problem. And we want you to know that when you have those thoughts, that's your opportunity to go, oh shit, let me make this phone call. Let me get out of the dark room. Because when you get so comfortable in that dark spot that you start to look around and realize I can't see anything, you're going to miss somebody coming with a flashlight to find you and help you, whether it's, last night, my best friend of 30 years, 10 years, just 20 years, I don't know, math, just taking a moment to go, I'm telling you, I have time.
Right.
Talk to me.
Well, I think one of the things, and to bring this into a law enforcement aspect, one of the it's very very commonplace, is when an officer's fighting for a suspect, and
Right.
I'm not talking about guys pulling away and you have to put
Talking
them down
about
on the ground.
legitimate fight.
I'm talking about legitimate. This guy, he could be high on meth or PCP, or he's not feeling anything.
Right.
And you were just duking it out, and and it's you have these moments where guys take or cops will take, and they may not put radio traffic over the radio because hey, they're busy. They're
in the middle of a fight.
Of whether it be trying to grab or punch or pull or
struggle, right?
Whatever. There's a struggle going on, and
help.
There comes a part where having been in fights where hey, look, I'm giving it everything that I've got. I've gone through all my training. I've now exceeded past that. Like we're
Right.
doing whatever could possibly work.
Right.
I'm trying not to take this dude's life. Like we're trying to just end this peacefully, but it's not working.
Right.
There comes a part where you have to take a moment and you focus. Where in the ever loving hell is my radio? Because I've got to key up and let everybody know what's
Right. I
going
got
on.
to tell somebody to help me.
And we call it is what is the code for it for us.
Yeah, that's nationwide,
it's an
so it's not a
officer
secret.
fighting.
Right.
Our officer needs assistance, and when you hit, sometimes you key up and say it, and it activates to everybody.
Yeah.
And one of the things that you run into is